Hello, hello, hello. So I'm Laramis, a political streamer, and I thought we got Milton Friedman. We critiqued his critique of a young idealist last week. So let's go over someone more recent, like Ben Shapiro. Now, Ben Shapiro, if you don't know who he is probably the most popular figurehead of the right, at least on the online space. And we've got this video of him debating a SJW right here, so let's go over it.
And one of the tough things I would suggest that we face up to is that you have a lot more control over your own behavior and the decisions you make than the supposedly widespread unconscious bias of people you've never met.
Unconscious bias is a concept well documented in psychological studies, which is basically that people associate negative things with people of color and positive things with whites. So if that is true, given that that is true, how does white privilege not exist?
Okay, so you're asking about unconscious bias. I apologize because it's kind of echoey, but the question was, if there is unconscious bias, just to repeat it so I'm making sure I get it right. If there is unconscious bias, how does white privilege not exist?
The question is, given that there is unconscious bias, how does white privilege
So,
not exist?
okay, so number one, so when I speak about white privilege, yes, so when I speak about white privilege, I'm speaking specifically about behavior. Okay, there have been no studies, and really I've looked at these studies, the connection between what they call implicit bias, this is their favorite phrase now, implicit bias, unconscious bias, and biased behavior has yet to be proven at any level that is even remotely necessary to be used in, for example, a courtroom, which is why it's never been used in a courtroom. It is also true that there is no way, there really isn't, there's been no...
So this is patently false because almost the entirety of the court selection process is making sure that you don't have people who are too biased to objectively look at the case. So this is a really bad example on his part. I do not understand why he's using this as an example. Furthermore, even once you get to the courtroom, for those of you who have been this unlucky enough to get this far into the jury selection process, the lawyers will specifically ask you if there's anything you feel might disqualify you from the case, and they can knock you right off if they don't have to give any other reason other than they don't have... Well, I don't know if they have to give a reason. But it's very liberal in that the reason they can give can be not well justified, which is far different from the selection process of eliminating people with subconscious biases before that point.
No proven way to alleviate what they call unconscious bias, which means that we're ghost hunting. So what I would suggest is that if there is unconscious bias, and I'll acknowledge the possibility or the reality of unconscious bias, if there is, then I need you to I don't care about what's in people's heads so much as what they do. So if you point me to a racist behavior, don't worry, I'll let you respond. If you point me to a racist behavior, I'm happy to stand alongside you and protest it. What I can't do is protest about things in people's head that I don't know about because I'm not a mind reader.
Okay, so that's a really interesting...
So, hopefully she'll bring this up, but there's the issue of black men getting sentenced to prison at nearly 4 times the rate of marijuana consumption, despite consuming it at roughly the same rate as white men. What was it? Police officers are more rough with black men, despite white people resisting arrest far more often. There's a number of other statistics like this. Just to name one more, employers are less likely to employ you if you have a black-sounding name. Now, Thomas Sowell has a report that supposedly debunks this, but the normalized names he has for black-sounding names are pretty white-sounding, if you ask me. But, of course, you can look at the study if you disagree with my assessment.
in response. And to that, I have 2 questions. Firstly, what I've heard you say that this is something that, the way people think doesn't affect their behavior. So that's the first thing you've said. So I'm really curious if you can kind of give me another example of a thought that somebody has which doesn't affect their behavior. Like, do people who, support Trump not vote for him? Like, I'm very curious about that.
Yes.
And secondly, so the second thing that
So I wish she challenged him on that. It doesn't look like she's going to. But obviously she wasn't implying that nobody who supports Trump is not going to vote for him. She was just indicating that they are very highly correlated. which is empirically true. So this seems like a pretty dishonest, I don't know if it's a deflection or red herring on Shapiro's part, but let's continue.
Want to ask is that if it's something that's it's hard to fix, does it mean we shouldn't do anything about it? Because you said, oh, I don't know if we can change how people think. Does that mean we shouldn't try?
I mean, first of all, not a great impression. But beyond that, my voice isn't that low. But beyond that, as far as the first question, which is do people have thoughts that don't manifest in behavior? Yes, all the time.
For instance,
Every thought that you have about walking up here and strangling me right now. I assume like we have thoughts all the time that don't manifest in behavior, and this is true every single day. We consider thoughts that cross our minds. And the problem with unconscious bias is the idea.
So I don't know if that was the question she asked. If it was, then it was pretty stupid because, yeah, not all of our unconscious thoughts manifest in behavior, obviously, because we're not physically capable of acting out on all of our unconscious thoughts. They're far too rapid, I would assume. Hopefully people are capable of thinking that fast, but maybe I'm wrong.
Is you don't even know that you're having the thought, right? So how can you stop it if you don't even know that you're having it? But then we should be able to gauge the unconscious bias and its impact on behavior. That's why it's unconscious bias as opposed to conscious bias. And the idea behind unconscious bias is that it's not even a ghost; it's a ghost of a ghost because you don't even know you're having the thought. So people like the whole idea behind diversity training is the idea that you can retrain people to stop their chain of thoughts in order so that it doesn't manifest in behavior. I don't think that every thought manifests in behavior. If it did, then every time a man saw a good-looking woman walk down the street, a straight man saw a good-looking woman down the street, we'd have a real mess on our hands. So this.
Again, it's perfectly possible for us to not act on our unconscious behavior. I don't know why she implied that it's not... That was just such a stupid question to ask. Why it's not such a... Why we can't not act on unconscious behavior. But she is in front of a hostile audience, and I can understand that she wants to be very courteous to Ben Shapiro, because if we saw anything with his interview on BBC, he can get very emotional about criticism. But
second question, the idea was a little too broad for me to respond to, which is just because something is tough, don't we have to face up to it? Yes, we have to face up to tough things all the time. And one of the tough things I would suggest that we face up to is that you have a lot more control over your own behavior and the decisions you make than the supposedly widespread unconscious bias of people you've never met.
Okay, so this is true, but when it's a systemic problem, such as the case of black men being incarcerated at nearly 4 times the rate for drug charges, despite white people consuming them at roughly the same rate, as well as black-sounding names being less likely to be hired by employers, as well as the other examples I've listed. This is not something you can just accomplish by fixing yourself, your own issues, your own racial subconscious issues. I wish this woman had brought up some of these issues, so I could more directly address Ben Shapiro's counter arguments against them, but that was it was probably very intentional on his part that this is the clip he uploaded, because this clip was uploaded a week ago, but I'm pretty sure he uploaded something like this on his channel a year or two ago, because I don't think he's doing these anymore with COVID restrictions. Even if Ben Shapiro's followers don't really believe in COVID-19, I'm pretty sure he does. So, but if you're looking for the instance of Ben Shapiro's, I guess, freak out on BBC, if the few of you who haven't seen it, let's see. Andrew Neil, that was his name.
Why is it that a bill banning abortions after a woman has been pregnant for 6 weeks?
So I'll just skip to the end
is not
of this so you can see how Ben freaks out. And the questions that were asked of him were regarding his past. They were pretty tepid questions. And in the end, he admitted he was wrong, which is better than nothing. But this shows that he's very unfriendly to criticism.
is turning its
honestly,
back
sir,
on Judeo-Christian values.
Yeah, this,
what are
considering
those values?
considering
what are the values it's turning its back on?
I'm not inclined to continue an interview with a person as badly motivated as you as an interviewer. So I think we're done here. I appreciate your time.
All
Thank
right.
you so
Well,
much.
thank you for your time and for showing that anger is not part of American political discourse. Now, Mr. Shapiro, we'll say goodbye.
So it's pretty clear why that woman probably wanted to be extra careful with what she was saying to Mr.